Well, it finally happened. The new mainline Fire Emblem, Engage, was announced at the latest Nintendo Direct, and we saw it coming. Leaks of the game have been around for months, which were a lot to take in, to say the least. But for better or worse, here we are. It's been a good while since the trailer, so I won't bore you by just going over it. Rather, I want to just discuss and share my opinion on what we've seen of the game's attributes in the trailer and the little clips since, particularly the controversial ones, the story and visual presentation. Let's start with the story. There are some immediate comparisons to make with Awakening, and especially Heroes, in how it incorporates older titles into its lore by means of their protagonists, though it's somehow more overt here. Besides adopting Awakening's lore setup of an old hero, implied to be a previous lord, taking out a fell dragon, almost all of the old lords were literally brought into this world to fight them too, and you can bet the other lords will turn up, either later in the story or as DLC. Though maybe I shouldn't say that with Chest, since Warriors was a thing. Either way, this potentially means all the lords canonically met and fought alongside each other at some point, which is kinda bizarre to me, but I guess it fits the tone. This is apparently an anniversary game, like Awakening, and just like Awakening, all these references to older games are in service of a sort of series celebration. That's emphasized by some of the diction in the trailer's voiceover, using familiar terms like binding and fell dragon, which naturally implies a lot of prior inspiration. It reminds me of Sonic Generations, and even though it's not an anniversary game, Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Both of those are arguably the best of their respective series in the last decade, so that's not bad company to be in, right? And I can see it having a somewhat light plot like Generations. Knowing this is an anniversary game, and seeing the lore and MacGuffin plot setup of collecting all the emblem rings, I get the feeling the story may be an excuse to celebrate and reference stuff from the previous games, and be a kind of Fire Emblem menagerie, like Awakening, but with feet and minty fresh breath. That even bleeds into the gameplay, which has even more obvious Awakening and Heroes comparisons, along with Tokyo Mirage Sessions, of all things. Awakening's Ironharja concept introduced the summoning old FE characters thing, which Heroes evolved, and TMS introduced the gaining powers from old FE characters thing. Engage blends those together. Its main gimmick revolves around using special antiquities as a medium to channel the powers, skills, and even appearance of presumably dead heroes, if it's been 1,000 years. People have already made the Persona and JoJo's references, but to me, that's literally Shaman King, if anyone's seen that. Beyond that, free roaming outside of battle is still a thing, which I appreciate. I liked the concept in Three Houses, though ultimately there wasn't really enough to do for how long the story was, and the monastery ends up really overstaying its welcome by the end of White Clouds, and especially in Part 2. So hopefully it'll be a bit more fleshed out this time, though we've not seen much. So far we've seen that you can customize your unit's looks in various ways, including the main character, which brings me to the game's avatar. I'll be honest, I'm really burned out on avatars right now. Corrin and Byleth are, in my opinion, active detriments to their games. Hot take, I know. Shares was something of a bright spot, but even they feel kinda superfluous to Three Hopes when I deep it. Not that I needed them to be the center of the universe or anything, god no, but their character doesn't really give us much in the end. Every story just kind of stops without answering much of anything about them. I'd have preferred just playing as the house leaders, and Rhea if they gave a damn about the church. So I'm not exactly jazzed with doing this again. It feels almost like ISC avatars as compulsory nowadays. And I get it, people love them, they're an easy way to get player buy-in, and they don't exactly require Shakespearean levels of writing to execute. But for me, Three Houses sort of hamstrung its high-concept, massive scope story by centering around this literal god mode mannequin with the charisma of a shoelace. So I've been hoping the series would try a more down-to-earth story next, with a more traditionally written, maybe even non-noble, protagonist that's entirely themselves and not me. Aaliyah seems to be the exact opposite of that, but thankfully I knew better than to expect what I wanted, so I've been prepared to hold this L. Aaliyah is another Avatar MC from a special dragon race that's woken up from an extended slumber by a pair of siblings. If they turn out to be amnesiac as well, they'd be cribbing from almost every single other Avatar. It's funny, for how wacky Aaliyah's design is, and we'll get to that, their introduction and concept are ironically generic, but knowing this is an anniversary celebration, I'm not actually mad at it. In terms of other named characters, the twins that wake you up, Fram and Cram, obviously reference Felicia and Flora waking you up in Fates, which itself references Crom and Lissa waking you up in Awakening. From their contrasting personalities and designs, to their shared role as protectors of their lord, and the whole red-green thing going on, they seem like a new Cain and Abel archetype pairing, which we haven't really seen since Echoes, and Vanda is the most Jagan-looking Jagan that ever Jaganed since FE6 Marcus. Seeing so many familiar character archetypes seemingly being played straight makes me feel like this is gonna be a fairly traditional Fire Emblem cast. And again, with this being an anniversary, that makes sense. And it doesn't necessarily preclude them from having depth, nuance, charm, or from surprising us. Here's hoping they're at least fun to have around. So let's talk about the really controversial topic here, the presentation. The game's a huge visual departure from Three Houses, and really most of the series. It really highlights how much a change in lead artist impacts a game's whole visual style, or maybe the other way around. It probably also highlights how rushed Three Houses actually was, despite its quality. On a technical level, this is a straight upgrade. It's far more polished, with higher quality textures, better coloring, better models, more fluid animations, and much more dynamic and bombastic set pieces during combat. Just put the, admittedly cringely named, Emblem Engage sequences next to the combat art animations for even Byleth and the House Leader's Heroes relics. It's really no contest. The UI also seems fairly clean and unobtrusive, while still seeming quite detailed, which is always nice. The game's apparently been ready for about a year, so that explains all the polish compared to Three Houses. On a technical level, I don't think there's too much to complain about so far. The real division here, and where I personally start to fall off myself, is the visual style. Don't worry, I'm not gonna say it looks too anime, because that would be very arbitrary. There's no denying that Fire Emblem's always been anime influenced, with games often resembling popular contemporary art styles, from the old-school romantic 90s style in the Yggdrasil games, to the flashier, more modern fantasy style in Awakening and Fates. Here, it's a bright, colourful, simplistic high fantasy style that emphasises a sort of youthful look. People reference Genshin Impact, which I can definitely see. I'm also reminded of Dragalia Lost, Xenoblade, and the Atelier series, which makes perfect sense because Gust have a hand in this. Compared to Three Houses' more generally grounded designs, they seem a lot louder this time, more contemporary, I suppose. I wasn't huge on Three Houses' art style, but the character designs grew on me quite a bit. Here, it's sort of the opposite. The style is okay enough to me. I like poppy, colourful art styles, like in the GBA games, and I actually think it fits okay for a game that's primarily a celebration. But all the designs I've seen are a hard pass. They just feel lacking to me in a way that's hard to explain. I noticed a bit of same face as well, particularly among the female cast, and I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of the moe aspect of the designs as a whole. Bro, why are we beating up kids? They generally just aren't really hitting the spot, especially Toothpaste Man and Pepsi-chan. I honestly thought Bylass would be the bottom of the barrel for Lord designs for me, but they managed to surpass her in the very next game. Twice. That's actually impressive. Aaliyah's designs simultaneously feel too busy and ridiculous to me, while somehow not leaving much of a lasting impression on me other than they look kinda silly. It's not even like I have a problem with heterochromia or two-toned hair as a whole. I mean, Shoto Todoroki does both of those things, and I actually really like his design. In fact, I think he has a better Lord design than they do, and I'm kind of tired of the female version of the avatar always being cutesied up and fan service next to the guy. Why are their eyes wider than my future, bro? I'd like to think I'm not a prude or anything, but it's just so tacky and patronizing to me, and at this point, it's just boring as well. Not to mention, it's sort of bizarre to me that a character that is ostensibly designed to represent the player would be designed like that. I don't know why this keeps being a thing when they got Robin basically spot on a decade ago. I mean, I do know why, I just don't want to say it. Naturally, none of this is to disparage or disrespect the work that Mika Picasso, the artist of the game, put into these designs. They're just not for me so far, but I do remember not being that into Three Houses character designs either, to begin with, and they grew on me. So, we'll see. Ultimately, it's a mixed bag for me so far. I'll happily take what I've seen on a technical level, especially compared to Three Houses, but stylistically, the jury is still out. Actually, while we're talking about Three Houses, this might be a weird take, but this game feels almost like it's going to be an anti-Three Houses. From the more saturated colours and whimsical designs, compared to Three Houses' more muted colours and grounded designs, to the overall direction they seem to be going for. Engage is obviously leaning really hard into the series' history, and seems fairly traditional story and character-wise, referencing familiar concepts and archetypes, as opposed to Three Houses, which forged its own identity both through original ideas and twisting or playing with established series tropes and archetypes to create new concepts. If this wasn't an anniversary game, I'd probably be a little bit more concerned by this, as it'd feel uncharacteristically derivative for Fire Emblem, but since it is, that tracks. I still think there's a line to avoid crossing though. I feel like celebratory self-referencing can only go so far before it becomes using pandering as a crutch for unoriginality. Awakening did fairly well at towing the line. Despite borrowing a lot of ideas from other games, it's got a pretty distinct identity of its own. Time will tell if this does too. Overall, I can't say I'm sold, but I'm not too worried either. We've only had the one trailer and little bits of extras so far, and I was similarly unimpressed by Three Houses until its absolutely bonkers E3 trailer, which made me go from 0 to 100 like Drake. And with the game coming out in January, info will likely come thick and fast in the coming months. Even besides that, I'm still really not pressed. Partially because I just don't have the time or inclination to mold over games, but also because, as far as I'm concerned, modern Fire Emblem has never truly missed. I can safely say I've never played a Fire Emblem I thought was a bad game. Don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean I love them all, doesn't even mean I like them all, because these games exist, but even those I would say are still generally well-made products, they're just not for me. So I guess you could say the series has enough goodwill in its back pocket to lay my doubts to rest. I've seen a lot of the discourse since the trailer came out, and it's been surprisingly meta. There's been as much conversation regarding people's negative reaction to the trailer as on the trailer itself. The old Fire Emblem fans hate Fire Emblem thing. For me, it all goes back to a video I put out a couple years ago, discussing the series' changing appeal over the years, and how each game has its own special thing that makes it certain people's favourite. This series plays with its formula a lot, and has been to a lot of different places tonally, visually, and gameplay-wise. Since I mentioned Generations, it's kind of like the Sonic series in that way, but with arguably more consistent success. It's only natural you'd have a lot of different fans attracted to many different things, and therefore there'll be a game where a lot of people aren't initially into what they see. It's just going to happen, and it's not just a matter of people always being upset. Naturally, I think it's completely valid whether you're hyped, doubtful, intrigued, apathetic, or something else entirely concerning this game. For me, even if it's not stylistically entirely my thing, I'm still fairly confident I'll have fun. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about the game for now. Now I want to hear what you guys have to say. Are you hyped? Concerned? Still holding out for more info? Let me know down below. And before I go, I just want to say thank you. The channel hit 1,000 subscribers about a week ago like Bobby Schmurder, which is absolutely bonkers. The thought that 1,000 people want to listen to me ramble on about who knows what every few months is hard to wrap my head around, but flattering all the same. So, a milestone special is in order. I'm leaning towards doing a 3 Houses character tier list, since we'll be leaving Fodlan pretty soon. I think that would make for a nice send-off, though to be clear, I still have 3 Houses related content I want to put out, like the rest of the Tarot series, so while the series may be done with Fodlan, I'm not quite yet. But with all that said, thanks very much for watching this video and the others, take care, and I'll see you later.